Welcome back to class. We are in session, and yet again, I'm still your professor, Allison Danger. We have an extra special guest coming from the Great White North via Ohio. I love her. This is one of my wrestling babies, so I adore her with all my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, your guest instructor is Sassy Stephie. Woohoo!
Hey! I'm so excited to be here, especially with my wrestling mama.
Oh, I love you. I miss you. How are you?
Doing good. My dog's obviously trying to get his say in as well.
Is that Baylor?
We're doing good. The Great White North isn't white yet, so we're excited about that. We got a couple, maybe a month or two before that happens.
Well, that's it? Only a month or two?
Well, usually it'll start in October, and then it's not bad until December usually, so.
Okay. I miss snow. I haven't seen it in forever.
Yeah, well, Vegas is not a very snowy place unless you look up in the mountains.
No, and I can actually see the mountains from my house. So from my balcony, I look and I see the snow caps and whatnot. But the last time we actually had snow was my kid's 10th birthday. And I have a video of her running up and down the streets of the neighborhood going, "It's a birthday miracle." Yeah, she was super duper stoked. So,
well, I remember she was born in February, so
yep.
Snow makes sense, but not seeing it that long has to be odd.
I know, and being that she's half Swiss too, you would think, she would see more snow, but we don't really get to go over to Switzerland much in the winter just because of school schedules and whatnot. We go more towards the summer, and it gets warm over there. Not like Vegas warm. Ugh, 118 this week. Ridiculous. But so everything's going well. How are you guys in Canada doing with the pandemic?
Well, both my husband and I were working from home, and we have our little guy who is here with us. So we get to have a lot of family time, which makes it difficult to work sometimes, but otherwise we can't complain. COVID is out and about, but Canada seems to be handling it pretty well. I mean, we all wear a mask when we go out. We all sanitize and wash our hands like we're supposed to, and we don't bitch about, edit. So let me start that over.
No, just keep going. We'll bleep it.
Okay.
Our first bleep. So, we got 4 episodes in and we got our first bleep. Woohoo!
So we don't complain about it like some other people do, maybe in the US that I've heard. So
is that shots fired?
Just saying.
Well, as Canadian.
I'm Canadian now. I can say that.
You are Canadian. How does it feel to be a fellow Canuck?
It's great. People I always thought people used to tease me from the South, like, oh, you're in Ohio. That's like practically Canada. I'm like, no, it's not. And then I moved to Canada. I'm like, this is so awesome. I have no complaints.
Our people are nice, aren't they?
For the most part. But like you said in your episode with Allison and Marty, the French Canadians, maybe not so much.
French Canadians.
Not all of them, obviously, but a good portion of them.
So have you watched Letterkenny?
No.
Oh my goodness, you need to get on it. They have great opinions about the Quebecers.
Oh, I will definitely have to check that out.
Yes, it's on Hulu, so. Okay. It's a Canadian show, so it's on Crave. You guys have a channel called Crave? Yeah. It's definitely not for younger ears.
Yeah.
You don't want your young one talking about Squirrely Dan. We're talking like Squirrely Dan, though he's a delight. And,
yeah.
Yes, it's quite popular amongst the transplanted Canadians down here in the United States. There's a lot of wine and stir conversations happening. A boot. Yeah, there's a little bit of boot. So how's the food? You live in the poutine life?
I'm actually not a fan of the poutine, and my husband says I have to be kicked out of Quebec for that. But I'm from the States, right? So I want gravy and I want real cheese and French fries. I don't want this watered down gravy and these cheese curds. To me, they taste like plastic. So I would be a bad Wisconsin person if I were born there. Thank God I wasn't. So
I'm wondering if I air this episode and you get your citizenship revoked, be like, get out.
I may.
Get out.
I possibly, but I did I did like smoked meat recently. I didn't like it when I first moved here, but now I'm into it.
Okay, you're feeling the
I can't
smoked
complain
meat.
about it. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Another big Montreal thing.
Okay, I never had smoked meat when I was there. I've only been to Montreal a few times. I actually went blueberry picking up there about 6 years ago this month. I
Oh,
came up
wow.
to do
It's been
some
a while.
evening stuff for Femme Fatales.
Well, come back and we'll go and we'll get some smoked meat on the way back.
I don't eat meat anymore. I
Oh,
gave up meat in June for health reasons. I was having some health issues, and it was suggested that I try giving up meat and as much sugar as possible. I gave up Sour Patch Kids. I gave up bacon. I gave up all that.
well, then we'll go get poutine at
Okay.
one of the best poutine places that Chris and I, my husband and I, gone to over last summer. It was like
Okay.
one of the places to go here in Montreal.
Oh, if you get the chance, if you chat with him, ask Stefan about this dumpling place near his house in Montreal. Best
Okay.
dumplings and peanut sauce I've ever had.
You know, it's crazy because Chris and I went to a dumpling place totally by accident. It was a hole in the wall. We were with a bunch of friends and no one had room for like 8 people. We're dumb for trying to go out at night with 8 people anyway on without a reservation. But we found this little hole in the wall place and they had dumplings. It's those
Oh,
hole in the wall places that are like the best.
yeah, the little mom and pop shops and
Yes.
whatnot. And I become that person that when we travel with the family, we only like to eat local small business. And man, you find some gems.
Yes, absolutely. For
So,
sure.
and you guys have really good candy up in Canada.
I
Coffee
know
crisp.
we go, you and I both go back and forth on who's going to send who what candy.
Mm. Yes, I owe, if you're watching at home, I owe this young lady 2 bags of Starburst jelly beans because her team beat my team once this season in hockey. And when the pandemic hit, I didn't handle it well. I ate my feelings a lot. And I saw your candy. I'm like, can't send it to her anyway. Everything's locked down. Don't want these Starbursts going bad, justifying why I hoovered both bags. Hoovered them.
But
So
they're
I owe
so
you
good, so I don't blame you.
are. And I got you the fave reds. So it was all the red ones. I know because that's how much I love you. But Halloween candy's gonna be coming out soon. Halloween candy's gonna be coming out soon, so I'm sure they're gonna have the Starburst jelly beans coming back. But and you guys get, I like sour anything, right? Sour Patch Kids, sour Skittles, but Canada has those extra sour Skittles that just oh, like they burn holes in your tongue, but that's how you know they're good.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know next time I go out, I'm going to grab you a couple bags and
Mm,
send them your way.
you're the
As long as the UPS, or not UPS, but the United Postal Service doesn't go down
oh,
completely.
oh, that's a conversation for another recording or maybe off
Oh yeah,
camera.
I'm still waiting on my absentee ballot, so I hope it comes.
I don't think I've gotten mine yet. I'm gonna vote in person though. I for the primaries in May, I masked up and dropped it off. I got that one in the mail. I dropped it off, but this one I'm gonna be there that day. Like
Yeah,
if
definitely.
I
If I
get my
were
ballot,
able to cross the border, I would do the same.
yeah, it's very, very important. So exercise your vote. 100
Absolutely.
and it's 100 years of suffragettes. So
That's right. Women finally
yes.
had the right to vote.
Well,
We gotta show up.
white women finally had the right to vote.
That's true. That's true.
We our ancestors didn't think of all the women, but you know what? Baylor, I know I'm opinionated on it too, buddy. I'm feeling it. I feel ya. I love
Yeah.
that dog. I love pictures of that dog. But yeah, we didn't do right with all our ladies, but I feel like generations now and moving forward are going to be a lot better and more inclusive.
Well,
So
I certainly hope so. I have hope for the future because we definitely need it, especially this year with everything that's going on and who's in power now. But that's a political rant for another day.
yeah, well, we'll leave the politics to backstage. Speaking of backstage, let's talk about wrestling. Let's talk about how you got in, who inspired you, what got you there. Tell me your stories. Share with the class.
I have lots of stories. Well, I was a ring announcer in a tiny, tiny bar. It started, I was a DJ at a local bowling alley, and I was going to this local show every week, and I was just hanging out, loved the show. There's maybe 5 to 10 people a week there. It wasn't like a huge show. And one of the commentators there I became friends with. He came to one of my specialty bowling nights. It was like 80s night. He came out to it. And he was like, oh, wow, you're actually pretty good, whatever. And then a couple weeks later, the ring announcer got sick. So they asked if I could fill in that night because he vouched for me. And I never left. I was the ring announcer every week after that. I loved it. At that time, Lillian Garcia was the only women ring announcer out there. So I picked up pretty quickly with getting other bookings because that was on a Tuesday night. So I had the weekends where I could do any other promotion I wanted. So I started ring announcing. I started backyard training a little bit. That didn't last long because I was like, this is not what I want to do, but at least it's getting my feet wet. And then I found there was 2 schools that had girls already wrestling at it. And one was CAPW with JT Lightning in Cleveland. And then the other one was OCW, which is what I ended up choosing. And I started training because I went and saw a match with Ashley, which is Madison Rain. Her name was Ashley Lane at the time, against Chantel and Taylor Wilde in the future. And fell in love with her style and went and trained with OCW and was there for probably a good 5 years. I trained for about a year before my first match. And that was, as most people would say, downhill from there. But that's how I got started.
That's
so it was
awesome.
kind of this weird way into wrestling because somebody asked me, they're like, why don't you train? And I was like, epiphany, like light bulb went off in my head. Why don't I? So that's when I started looking at the different schools in Ohio.
And Ohio has really given us some great female wrestlers.
Oh, yes, definitely.
You came in at a good time. You got your Jessica Havocks, your Nevaehas. Who else came out of Ohio?
Angel Dust or Zoe Sky. Of course, Ashley Lane or Madison Rain. I'm trying to think, but there's a lot. I mean, even Alexa Bliss now, she's from Columbus. Dana Brooke is from the Cleveland area. I mean, there's even women today in WWE that are from Ohio that maybe people just don't tend to notice that are from Ohio, but are just doing big things as well that weren't, necessarily on the independents.
Right. I know Hudson Envy's also from Ohio.
Oh, I didn't know she was from Ohio.
Yeah, she's an Ohio girl. I know she was there back. I believe she's there again right now. So, but she's currently we're all kind of on a wrestling sabbatical, but I know she's on one right now. But yeah, Ohio had a lot of good girls. And when I came from the Philadelphia area, there was a while there where we were getting some good crossover. And you met me in Ohio. Okay, so because when I think of the first time we met, I am wrong about the first time we met. You remember the first time we met. Apparently the story I tell is the second time we met.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you get to tell the first time, and then I get to tell my first time because my brain's Swiss cheese.
Okay. Well, the first time you didn't know we met because I was just a fan at the time. Well, I was training, and I don't know if I was having matches yet or not, but I went to a Ring of Honor show in Cleveland, and I walk into the washroom or restroom or bathroom, whatever you guys call it there in the States. I'm such a Quebecer now. But I walk in and you and Daisy are in the washroom doing your makeup, and you had on What Would Uncle Jesse Do t-shirt. And I was like, oh, that's a really cool t-shirt. I love it. And we started talking in conversation there. And like, I obviously already knew who you two were. Cause I mean, if you were coming in women's wrestling at that time, there wasn't like a huge plethora of independent women that you could like, not like today anyway. You could be like, oh, I know this person. Oh, I don't know who that is. That wasn't really the case in probably, 2007, 8, 9, somewhere around there. So obviously I knew who you guys were, and Shimmer was running. So I talked to you in the washroom for a little bit, and then I went out during intermission and I got the first Shimmer DVD, or maybe it was the second, I don't know. I still have it somewhere, but both you and Daisy autographed it for me. And I was like, oh, this is like the coolest thing ever. So that's why you don't remember it, but me, I remember it because obviously like going into wrestling and having the limited amount of women that you could really look up to at that time, Like I watched you and what you were doing, and I was just like, I love Allison Danger. She's so cool. So then that led into the second time that we met, which is the first time that you remember.
So it's the first time that I remember. So the first time that I remember is Sarah Del Rey and I were flown into Ohio to do a show. And you picked us up at the airport and you knew I was hungry. So you took us to a Bob Evans and we ate there. And I remember you were across the table from me. And I kept thinking, I'm like, man, this girl's in like really good shape, like super, super lean, muscular, like, and you had this big, bright smile and these beautiful eyes. And I remember Sarah sitting next to me, and there was a couple other people at the table, and I don't remember who everybody was, but we did an all women show, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I came in and I forget who this show was for, but I was like, I don't like this booking. We should change this. You know, such a Carino attitude. Like, I feel like if there's anything I learned from Steve, it's that. It's coming in and going, well, I think we can improve upon this show. And I think I went ahead and like changed some of it and like turned something, and I think something ended up being a three-way with like me, Del Rey, and like ODB was there. And it was the first time I met Jessica Havoc, who was doing the German gimmick.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm married. Am I married at this point? No, I'm not married yet. But I'm dating, or I'm probably already engaged to my husband because we wasted no time on that one. And I was talking to her and I'm like, well, what German do you know? And she's like, I don't know any German. I'm like, so I'm in the back trying to teach Jessica Havoc German to yell at people. And at this point, my German's not that great. I mean, it's improved, but it's still not that great. And who else was on that show? I'm trying to think, but yeah, but that's what I remember. I remember you getting me at the airport, and I remember being impressed because you were on time. Because one thing that drives me nuts is when I would go into a city, especially working for a new company, and they either wouldn't have somebody set up to come get us, or that person was just like late. And I've been stuck at the airport for 3 hours before waiting on a ride. And this was before Uber and Lyft and all that. So that tells you how old I am. But I remember like you were right on time, super polite. And I was like, oh, I really like this kid. This kid's good. And then I want to say I talked to your mom on the phone that day.
Oh, most likely. My mom was my biggest fan.
Oh, I loved your mom, man. Your mom was so much fun. And every time we hung out, I was like, talk to your mom today? No, call her. Let's talk to your mom. Let's call her. Let's call Patty. So, and your mom was really sweet. She'd send me little gift packages in the mail, and, you know, she'd just be out and about and she'd think of me or she'd think of my kid. The next thing I know, there's a little package of goodies coming from you. And I was like, oh, I love your mom.
Yeah, she was the best. But the backstory, there's even more to that story. Like even, well, obviously you don't know of from, so that all women show was for OCW, which was the company that I came in with. It was the first year, which was my very first match. Was an all women show. And then the next year, because that show was insane, my first show, like I'm going to be the first person out of the curtain besides the ring announcer. And they unveiled the first ever women's title, because at that time it had only been Ashley wrestling. So they'd bring in different people for her to wrestle. But now both Jessica, myself, Nevaeh, we were all there on a regular basis. So we're like, okay, we're going to have a women's division. So we'll go to the first show and then I'll go into the story with you. So the first show, I'm getting ready and my trainer's there. His name's Jeff. He's like, oh, we have a good house tonight, girls. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I'm already nervous. It's my first match. So, you know, don't make it worse. So at the time his wife comes back and she's like, how many tickets did you print? And he's like, 250. And she's like, I don't have any left. What do I do? And he's like, just start marking on hands. And we're in a big gymnasium. Okay. I'm like, oh man, 250 people, my first match. That's a lot, you know? And then she comes back and she's like, we're at standing room only. And he's like, well, how many people is that? 400. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm freaking out because I'm going to be the first person out the door. Like, oh, it was so crazy. So it ended up going pretty well. I loved it. Ashley was a great help to me in that match. I mean, obviously she pulled me through being my veteran. But then, so the second year's coming up and I'm like, Jeff had made the list of the women who's coming in. I'm like, Jeff, please let me wrestle Allison Danger. Please. He's like, you're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. And I'm like, oh my God, please. And he's like, no. So I'm like, okay. So then we had the matches that were set, and then there was a snowstorm and one girl couldn't make it in. So it was supposed to be all singles matches at first. So then when you and Sarah came in, you switched it up. It was 2 fatal 4-ways and then a 3-way at the end to face the champion. And then the championship match was at another show. So you put me in the match with you, Ashley, and Lorelei Lee. And then, yeah, there's a name you haven't heard in a while, Lorelei.
Oh.
And then I forget who was on Sarah's match. It was Sarah, ODB, I want to say Josie, and I don't remember who the 4th person was that was in that match. And then Nevaeh was champion, so Nevaeh had a match, I think, against Helena Heavenly that day. So
yeah, because
that was,
I put in some matches, and I want to say ODB and Sarah both moved on to the main to make it a 3-way, because I think I set up like a double pin situation.
That might have been it. Yeah,
those 2 pinned the other 2, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Man, that was fun. That was a good weekend.
It was awesome. That was the second time we met. And one thing that, you spoke about my mom, and the one thing she always taught me is, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, don't bother showing up. So that's like something I've taken through my whole life. I mean, obviously she was never in wrestling. I mean, she loved it when I was a kid and then fell out of it. And then when I started wrestling, she's like, oh, you're crazy. And then she became my biggest fan. So it was great.
That's amazing. And then we didn't get to do a lot of matches, but do you remember the one we did in North Jersey?
Yes. You injured me. No, not legitimately.
Was injured.
That was the storyline. Yeah.
But you injured me in the locker room. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay. So let me tell you a little story about Sassy trying to kill me before a match.
Oh, yes, I do.
Back in when I was hitting the gym, me and Del Rey were roommates for a while, and that was our life. Gym, cooking, wrestling, and Golden Girls. That was the 4 things. And I like these drinks called Red Line. And eventually, when I got married and I took my sabbatical, had my kid, came back, Stephie remembered that I like these Red Line, these pre-workout things, right? So I
enjoyed them as well.
They were tasty. They're like sour candy,
very
right?
Tasty.
So she brings me one. Now, I haven't had one in like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, right? Well, I gunned that thing before the match because I'm like, yeah, just pre-workout, whatever. And then I'm sitting in the back and I'm looking at Del Rey going, I don't feel so good. She's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I'm going to throw up. Blah! Start getting sick in the locker room. And I'm like calling this match to you while like trying not to puke. We end up, you go into the ring first, and I'm literally at the curtain. I throw up next to the curtain, but in a trash can. Go out. We do this match. We go like, I think 15, 20 minutes. We do the injury angle with your arm. We come back. They have a clean trash can waiting for me in the locker room, and I just turn it on its side, and I crawl in, and I just stay there for like an hour till the show is over. She tried to kill me before a show.
Not on purpose.
I know.
Not on purpose. I would never try to kill my wrestling mom. You've been very, very good to me.
No, I know.
So I would never do that on purpose.
You had sweet intentions. It was wonderful, and I appreciate that about you. But I'll never drink another one of those things.
I did. Like I don't even know if they make them still, do they?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. So
I can't have them either. So
yeah. Ever since my stroke, I can't drink them. So
yeah, me, I have. It's not bad, but I have a heart murmur. Okay. I've had it since birth, so it's not bad. But they highly recommend I don't take any energy drinks or anything of that sort to cause palpitations and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, most of them are trash anyway, so you're not missing anything.
For sure.
So you said your mom was a wrestling fan. Is she who got you into wrestling? And like, what were the women that you were first introduced to?
Okay, so when I was a kid, I have a picture. I wish I I'll find it sometime and I'll post it for you. They went to WrestleMania 3, my dad and my mom did, in Detroit. So they came back with the original yellow and red Hulkamania t-shirt. So I have a picture of me with like a Made in America headband and the original Hulkamania shirt. And like, of course, I'm like 3. I don't know anything about wrestling then, but I had been watching it my entire life. It just wasn't something that like, I guess I paid a lot of attention to. When I started paying attention, I was probably 6 or 7. And I see this woman walking out to the ring with Shawn Michaels with this big giant mirror and these flashy outfits. And I was like, oh my God, Sensational Sherri. And ever since I saw Sensational Sherri, I was hook, line, and sinker into wrestling. Like as a kid, I didn't know what independent wrestling was, but I found it when I was 13. They came a show to my local high school. I loved it. I was eating it up like candy. I stuck with it all through the Attitude Era. I mean, there's been so many women since then that have influenced me. But I mean, I think even, especially if you go back to when I first started, like the black hair, sometimes I tease it out nice and big. Oh, I still did that a lot in the years later in my career too, but I would tease it out. I mean, Sensational Sherri was one of my biggest influences. I would do crazy makeup sometimes, like anything just to kind of be like her, because nobody was like her anymore once she got out. You know, I mean, she did a few spots here and there, but nobody was like Sensational Sherri. Nobody has been, and I don't think anybody ever will be in the future, but I was trying hard.
Do you remember that promo she did where like there's a cage and then she starts climbing the cage and then she disappears during the promo and pops back up? I've watched that thing on loop so many times because I'm like, that is genius. That's crazy. And when I joined the Prophecy with Ring of Honor, like after my first year there, Sherri was also my motivation of being a little wacky, a little out there. And Dan Moff would always be like, you know, you're our Sherri, you're our Sherri. And I'm like, that might be the biggest compliment I've gotten up to this point in wrestling because, you know, she was just cool. And then we lost her and we didn't. I feel like if she were still around, she would have been such a part of the Shimmer locker room.
Oh, and if that would have happened, you would have seen me worshiping her like crazy. I don't even think I would have been able to perform. I would have been just like, I love you so much. Thank you for everything you did. Because I mean, I didn't know about her wrestling until later in life. I just saw her as Shawn Michaels' valet for how many ever years she did that. And, you know, so it was all, oh, she wrestles too. And now with YouTube, obviously, even when I first started wrestling, YouTube wasn't that big of a thing. But now that it's bigger, like I go back and I see that promo, I see matches she did in AWA, and I'm like, oh, I love her. It was more simplistic than a lot of the wrestling you see now, but it was like, there was so much storytelling and little details that she put in there that I was just like, oh, I crave this. This is what I love. Like, I love the little nuances that she would do.
Oh, she was sensational. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I have one story. I never met Sherri, but I have one story. So it was right after she passed, which I started wrestling March of 2007, and she passed in June 2007. And I was on a show that week, and it was like a more old school. They wanted you to wear the one-piece style things and whatever. I was not really all into that, but I was like, okay, whatever. So I had a black band that I wore on my arm that said SSM for Sensational Sherri Martel. And Judy Martin was there. And she was like, what's your armband? And so I told her, and I ended up talking to her for like, oh God, probably the whole night. And she was like, you know what? Sherri would have loved you. And I was like, I think I cried at that point because like, that's how much she means to me. Like, oh, just, it meant so much to me, especially coming from Judy Martin, who is also obviously a huge influence in wrestling, in women's wrestling back in the late 80s and stuff like that. So like, to me, that was like the biggest compliment, is coming from another person in wrestling who was such an influence, talking about Sherri, someone she knew personally, that she would have loved me. So that was like the highlight for me, since I never actually got to meet Sherri.
And it's wonderful when we get those opportunities to have vets like that in the locker room. And I feel like with Judy Martin, she kind of gets lost in the shuffle when we start thinking about old school wrestling, past pioneers that made things happen. And admittedly, I'm not as well versed in Judy as I should be, and I do need to change that. But that's great when you have a vet that takes that time in the back and connects with you and connects with the younger folks, because they don't have to do it. They don't owe us anything. So when they do take that interest in us and bring something positive into a locker room, that's awesome. And that's special. And that's stuff you cherish. And like, how cool is it? You got to be like, I got to hang with Judy Martin. Yeah. Talk about Sherri. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's right. So you came in 2007, kind of like later Attitude Era. What else, what other females were sticking out to you?
Okay, so obviously before that, because like I said, as soon as I saw Sherri, I was hooked. And I'll tell a little embarrassing story. Well, it's not too bad, but anyway, I was in love with Alundra Blaze. I didn't know WCW at the time, so I didn't know Medusa at the time. But Alundra Blaze, like I remember I had this purple and pink, like neon pink bike, and I called it Alundra because I was like, oh, it's so pretty and smooth, just like her, and powerful, and oh, I loved it. So I had this bike and I named it Alundra Blaze. And like, obviously Medusa is such a huge influence in all of wrestling, not just women's wrestling, after her dropping the title on WCW. And like, it's such an iconic moment in wrestling, not just women's wrestling.
Right.
And now, she was doing part of the AEW Dynamite tag team tournament, like just seeing her on TV. And like the day she followed me on Twitter, like I legit, like Chris has to hear me like fangirl about a lot of things. But when she followed me, I was like, oh my God, Chris, oh my God, Electra, please, Medusa, she follows me.
I did that when Chyna followed me. When Chyna was still with us, she followed me and I go, no, clicked on it. It was legit. I'm like, oh, Chyna knows who I am. Oh.
That's exactly the moment I had with Medusa following me. I was like, oh my God, this is like, I clicked on it too because I was like, this is fake, right? Gotta be. And then no, it was really her. And I was like, oh man, I was through the roof excited because like I said, I loved her. When her and Bull Nakano, I remember I was wrestling a match in Pennsylvania and I walked in and they were watching old VHS tapes at the merch table, like before the show was open. And they had on one of the matches with Alundra Blaze and Bull Nakano. And she did this submission Bull Nakano did. And I'm like, I want to try that. And I failed royally. But I tried.
You tried.
I shouldn't have just said I want to do it right now. I should have like went to training and been like, okay, let me figure this out.
Oh,
you live in it.
Nakano's amazing.
I saw that she was at Shimmer a few times and oh man.
The few shows that I've missed her and I've missed Aja Khan. I literally was in the back, or I had messaged with Prazak and the other agents. And I think I told Prazak, Lexi, and Stefan, I'm like, Aja Khan, I'm going to run it in her match. I just want a back fist. I'm going to bump. I'm going to powder. I'm going to go to the back. They're like, why? So I can say I did it. I want to do this. They're like, you can't get hit in the face. I'm like, if I die, I die. I don't care. I want Aja Khan to back fist me, okay? Ended up, flight got canceled. Never made it to Chicago. Maybe the second show I'd ever missed. Third show I ever missed, second time she was back. Yeah. Still bitter. So I'm still waiting for my Aja.
I didn't even realize that.
Still waiting for my Aja moment.
Well, it's better than, like, I didn't have a sensational Sherri moment, and I haven't had an Alundra Blaze or Medusa moment besides the following on Twitter, but one day.
We need to change that. We need to hunt her down.
Yeah.
Hang out with her.
I'm sure somebody's probably going to at her and...
Legit? She's a dream.
I'm probably going to be like...
So it's like,
yeah, for sure. Medusa, why wouldn't she be?
Medusa, if you're watching, Stephie and I love you. And if you want to come on the show, I pay in cupcakes. or sour jelly beans or regular jelly. Girl, whatever you want. Whatever you want. It's yours. You want pretzels? Come on my show. The Shaza. Oh, I love
Oh, Shaz, I miss her.
I know. I miss her too. She's just an absolute delight. I actually did her podcast recently. So by the time this aired, her podcast will probably be about 3-4 weeks old. And she did a podcast on body image. So we talked about body image and wrestling and stuff like that. And I did a deep dive into my own psyche and kind of learned I was a little rough on some folks. I was too set in my ways. I think that could have made me slightly it worked with, but I can't change it now. Just be better. So
yeah, body image is hard in wrestling to begin with. So it's a very touchy subject for a lot of people.
I was reading something the other day that goes, isn't it weird that women's physical body types go in and out of fashion? And I'm like, that's crazy though. Like, I remember being young and it was like, oh, you got to be skinny, you got to be skinny, you got to be skinny. And then Jennifer Lopez comes out and it's like, we need to be flat bellied, but we got to have big booties. And I'm like, finally, I can do one of those things, but I had trouble doing the other. I had to get like super duper lean to kind of get my belly kind of down. And then I started to lose my butt. I'm like, I can't win. And now I got Body by Vegas buffets. I usually called it Body by Dick Murdoch, but this is definitely Body by Vegas buffets and being over 40. And
see, as I'm getting older, I'm finding it very hard to stay in the shape that I was in my younger years as well.
Yeah.
Especially after just having a baby too. It's hard. That's hard.
I worked really, really hard. Claudio Castagnoli gave me an eating plan that I dropped 28 pounds in 3 months after I had my kid, but my husband dropped 40 and ended up with a 6-pack. I didn't like it. I mean, I liked it, but I like him bigger because then I'm smaller next to him. And I like my Swiss Mountain Man with a little meat on him. He's so cute. I love him. Okay, I'm going to digress into something kind of gross for the rest of y'all, so I'm going to let that one slide.
Well, I started keto. I'm on my 9th week. I've lost 12 pounds, so I'm excited about that.
Feeling good?
And I'm having delicious food. So I'm like, it doesn't feel like a diet, because I'm still having cheese. I'm having bacon, not every day, but I'm having, like tonight I had tacos, but inside of a stuffed pepper.
Oh, yummy.
So it's very good. Like if you like vegetables and, stuff like that, you got to watch which vegetables you take because some are higher in carbs. But I mean, it's been doing wonders. Like I feel better. Obviously, it's not something I'm going to be on for the long run.
Right.
But to lose the weight at first, it's great. Like 12 pounds in 9 weeks. I really can't complain,
No, not at all. And they're not going to take my Brussels sprouts from me, are they?
Oh, I don't know. Brussels sprouts might be a little bit high, but it's all in your macros too. So if you see, like I have 25 net carbs per day that I can have. So if I say I want to have Brussels sprouts for dinner, then I manage the rest of my day around that.
Yeah. Yeah, don't take my Brussels sprouts. I love them. I'm a weird veggie girl though now.
I have a couple good recipes of Brussels sprouts that I really like.
You should send me some. I can eat cheese. I'm a vegetarian now, but I'm not a vegan. I can't be married to a Swiss guy and give up cheese. That's just, I don't know. I'm trying to get my Swiss citizenship, and my thoughts on the 1988 Eurovision already has me kind of flagged by the government. So, but that's for another day. Well, Stephie, I love you. I miss you. The Golden Knights are about to take the ice, so we're going to wrap this up. But I'm going to give you a platform. This camera is yours. Social media, what you got? Anything you want to talk about? Now's your moment. Go.
Okay, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, Sassy Stephie on all of them. I'm going to actually be starting a podcast of my own here in the near future, just waiting on some equipment to come in. So I will hopefully be having Miss Danger on there very soon. So look forward to that. And if you have any good titles for it, let me know at Sassy Stephie because I'm clueless.
We'll come up with something good, I promise you. I'm
Yeah,
excited
right now
for your
it's
podcast.
Untitled.
Ooh, I wonder if anyone could pull off a podcast called Untitled.
See, that's what I was wondering too. I'm like, there's a lot of like ones that are like unfiltered or this or that. And I'm like, but Untitled, because I'm not always going to be talking about wrestling either. Like, I have a guy set up for October, if all my equipment comes in, that's going to be talking about all paranormal stuff, which you know how much I enjoy that as well. So it's not all going to be wrestling.
We're going to have a hockey episode, you and me, right?
For sure.
And I'll be wearing my Stanley Cup Champions 2020 Golden Knights. Oh,
I hope so.
I hope so. I want to see Fleury and Patchy and Stone and March. So Alex Tuck's having a great postseason. Now we got to talk about that, but we'll talk about that off air because he's doing great.
Yeah, definitely.
Stephie, thank you so much for joining us. I love you. I miss you. Once all this calms down and my motherland will let me back in, I would love to come visit you or
yes,
you guys
please.
come see me. I don't care, whatever. But for those,
yes, please. Yes to all of the above.
For those watching at home, wash your hands, wear your masks, love one another. This has been Women's Herstory with Allison Danger, our guest instructor, Sassy Stephie. Can't wait to see you guys for the next one. Till then.